that people mute themselves to make sure we don't get as much interference as little interference as possible. Good evening and welcome to the Ryedale District Council Licensing Committee meeting of the 13th of April 2021. Can I ask firstly that if all members have had their agenda papers, please? Thank you. We will start with the minutes, you'll find on pages 3 onwards, the meeting held on the 27th of October. Can I move from the chair that we accept these as a true record of the meeting? May I have a seconder, please? Seconder, Councillor Goodrick. Thank you very much. Does anybody wish to vote against the minutes? Otherwise, we will accept them through general affirmation. If you'd record now, if anybody needs to abstain because they weren't present, that will be fine. But if anybody wishes to vote against accepting them, in which case we will accept them as a true record of the meeting by general affirmation. And we'll move on to item 3, urgent business. I have none. Declarations of interest. Members, please indicate whether you have any interest to declare under the Code of Conduct. Are there any declarations of interest? No. Thank you very much. Moving on to the main business of the meeting, item 5, the review of the taxi and private hire policy, pages 5 onwards. You'll see, can I firstly thank the officers concerned for this report. It's a model of clarity in which, insofar as it highlights the changes that have been made, and the general thrust is that it's fortuitous that it happens now when the district council is due to review its own policy, and it comes in virtually parallel with the government's advice. I hope you've had a chance to read through it. Mark Heaton is here in case there are any particular technical questions that need asking. Are there any questions or comment from the members of the committee? I don't see any hands raised. The recommendation is we accept, there are actually 2 parts, that we agree and adopt the new standards introduced by the government, and then secondly, approve the draft revised policy for consultation and next steps outlined at paragraph 8.1, which you'll find on page 10. Are there any comments? Are we happy to vote on the recommendation? There are no comments. Again, if there are nobody wishes to speak against it, I am very happy to accept the general affirmation of the committee that we accept the recommendations as highlighted on page 5. If nobody wishes to speak against them, in which case we will accept them by general affirmation. And I will go to item 6, any other business. And I have no other business. And I will thank the members present and the officers present for their attendance and close the meeting. And I will hand you over to the chairman of the planning committee. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Apologies. Good evening, members. Welcome to the Planning Committee meeting of the 13th of April. It is being held via Teams meeting due to COVID restrictions, and welcome everybody. Can I first of all ask if all members have a copy of the agenda, please? Nobody said they haven't, so on the basis that no one said they haven't got their agendas, we'll carry on. Can I ask the committee clerk if she's had any apologies for absence? I do know about Councillor Andrews and Councillor Ryedale being a substitute.
Yeah, apologies have been received from Councillor Andrews and Councillor Mason, with Councillor Ryedale substituting for Councillor Andrews, and there is no substitute for Councillor Mason.
Thank you very much for that. Much very grateful. Does any member have any declaration of interest, please? I'm not seeing any hands on the screen.
No.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's move on. Minutes of the last meeting, which was on the 16th of March. The full committee was here for that meeting. Does anybody have any amendments they wish to make to the minutes? These are a record of the meeting. They're not here to be changed. They're just whether they are correct or not. I see no show of hands on that basis.
Move them, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Can I have a seconder for the minutes, please? Thank you, Councillor Bailey. If everybody is happy to accept those minutes, as with my previous chairman in planning, we'll accept them. Councillor Ryby, I think you have to abstain purely because you weren't at the meeting. Is that correct? Is that what you're indicating?
Sorry, I misunderstood you. I didn't hear you clearly.
We are voting on the minutes from the last meeting, and I would take it by general affirmation, with the exception of yourself, Councillor Ryby, because you weren't at the meeting.
Yeah, I accept that totally. So, yeah,
is everybody else happy with that? Thank you very much. If we can move on, I've lost the frontispiece. Urgent business. I have no urgent business. However, I do see Gary Housden's hand up. Mr. Housden.
Thank you, Chairman. It's just a point of information and perhaps a question for Councillor Ryby, because he arrived late at the meeting, whether he'd got any declarations.
Oh. Sorry. No, I have no declarations, Gary.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Ryby. We will now move swiftly on to the schedule of items to be determined, and that's at page 7. But we move on to item 6, which is application number 20/00/00934/ Mount, that is. Land to the south of Ashdale Farm, Carr Lane, East Heslington. Members, it's on page 8 of your agenda. And I think, Gary, are you taking this?
Yes, Alan Goforth, as you know, is on a period of leave at the moment, having become a father recently. So he's delegated it upwards in the time-honoured tradition. So I've got that honour, Chairman, tonight.
Thank you very much.
Chairman, there is one update, but it's in relation to a plan issue. So I'll come to that after I've probably gone through the photographs on the presentation. I think, Chairman, I think that probably would be the easiest way, because to all intents and purposes, the report is as it is. So if Ellie can go to the presentation. Thank you, Ellie. If you can just go to the first photograph. And the first image is an aerial shot of the location of the application site, Chairman. That's edged red. And as you'll see, is accessed via a minor county road directly off the A64 at East Heslington, to the north side of the A64, outside of village development limits, so in open countryside. And just to orient members precisely where on the A64 we are, you can see the just to the right of the image of the red line is a little orange blob, and that's the snooty fox. So members might visualise where that is on the main road on the way to Scarborough. So it's just to the east of there, on the northern side of the road. Ellie, if you can move on to the next slide. All of these photographs are just photos of different views of the access to the site and the site itself. So this view is taken from Carr Lane to the south of the site, and you can see that there's a little finger of development on this side of Carr Lane, heading northwards. And as you can see in the foreground there are a pair of or two pairs of chalet bungalows there, Chairman, and then some hitch-roofed houses beyond. The southernmost access point sits between the first house and the last bungalow. So if we can go to the next image. This is stood directly in front of that field access point. As you can see, it's a relatively narrow access point, quite long, roughly runs in a west-east direction, and immediately abuts the curtilage of number 1 Carr Lane and the adjacent bungalow. So if you go to the next slide.
Gary, can I just interject quickly here? Sorry to interrupt the flow, but could I remind members to mute if they're not speaking, because it just makes it clearer for everybody to hear. Thank you very much, members.
In fact, Chairman, if everybody could mute, I can see one or two of the guests have got their microphone on. I think Mr. Hesford has.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm just trying to find it.
Okay, I'll carry on anyway. So this is just further up that field access point. As you can see, essentially a carport structure adjacent to the driveway of the bungalow to the right-hand side of the picture, and then the sorry, is that somebody's phone? And then the garden fence of number 1 Carr Lane to the left. So if you carry on to the next photo. Are we on the next photo, Ellie?
Should be.
My screen's frozen, Chairman. So I'll assume that you've got now a photo looking back down the access way with the house on the right-hand side. Oh, here you go. It's finally come through. So this is looking back down that field access with the rear gardens of the bungalows to the left, to the south, and the first of the houses to the north. And at this point, you're looking at where the site opens out in front of what is shown as plot 1 on the plans. To the next photo, Ellie. Right, I think the images are taking a little time to. Oh, sorry, you've now gone 2 or 3 on, Ellie. These next photographs show the main developable area of the site. So this is heading northwards towards Ashdale Farm. Ashdale Farm, if you take the limit of the application site, being roughly where the conifers are in the distance there. And these next photographs are panning round what are these open fields and paddocks. So if you can pan round them, Ellie. So this is heading eastwards towards the Scarborough direction. This is the outer eastern boundary. This is from the eastern boundary looking back towards the access and the rear gardens of the properties on Carr Lane. And the next one, Ellie. So this is angling across again, heading roughly northwest back towards Ashdale Farm. And if you pan round again, this is panning across that boundary. So you see the northern boundary of the site there in the distance. Panning round again. This is from the eastern boundary heading back towards the northwestern corner of the site. The next one, and this is along the eastern boundary heading back towards Ashdale Farm. And the next one, Ellie. So this is on that sort of eastern boundary looking back towards the last of the buildings on Carr Lane. The access point, another northernmost access point, which is the one that's a widened access point on the plan, which I'll refer you back to in a moment, comes out to the north of the bungalow that's sat in front of you. Right, this is a view from the application side heading towards the southern boundary, pretty much denoted by the other line of conifers there in the distance. And you see in the background, you can see the Wolds Hills, which are to the south of the A64. And the next photo, Ellie. This is panning around back to the western site boundary, again looking along the rear gardens of the other properties to the south of the access. I took these next 2 or 3 photos because many people would not have sort of seen the views that I've just shown you from close on and in the site in Carr Lane. This is a view taken from the footpath which runs along the A64 on the northern side of the A64. So in the immediate distance, you've got the edge of the village of East Heslington. You can see the village signs there. And as we pan across, behind me is the snooty fox. So as you pan across to the next photo, you can see in the distance the conifers that are pointed to you on the earlier photograph are to the left in the middle of that photograph, and the application site is the hedgerow line. So the properties would be located in that area. The next photo, Ellie. These next 2 photographs are just to give you a little more of an idea of what the access is like into Carr Lane. So this access point is taken to the south of both of the entrances to the site. And as you can see at this point here, the road is wide enough for 2 cars to pass each other. There's also a fairly narrow footway. But if you go further to what I think is the last photograph, this is the view taken from where the northern access point would be created. And at this point here, the lane has tapered down to just a single car width. And this is really why the Highway Authority's comments have been what they are, as reported in the committee report. Okay. Thank you. I think that's the last photograph, Ellie, but yeah, okay. Just to update members, we've had no further comment from the local highway authority, that is, in terms of clearing their objection in terms of the standard of the access that would be provided to serve the 5 dwellings that are proposed. We have, however, received a further location plan with access revisions on it, and the main change really is in relation to the provision of an on-site turning hammerhead, as I would describe it, which is proposed immediately adjacent to the southernmost narrow access point in front of plot 1. As you'll have seen from the quite voluminous information that's been submitted with the application has been promoted on the basis of almost like a one-way loop system, although the Highway Authority have not been particularly happy with that proposal. Twofold really: the southernmost access is not wide enough for 2 cars to pass each other, and also from an amenity point of view, that single access, which is a little used access to the field, would then become the main access point to potentially up to five properties. And clearly you'll have seen the reason 3 is relating to the potential for noise and disturbance associated with the toings and froings of that amount of traffic. So that's really where we are, Chairman. I'm happy to answer any questions that members may have, but as members can see, we have a number of concerns with regard to this application, both in principle and in detail, things that we've not been able to resolve, and particularly also draw members' attention to the lack of information in relation to archaeological issues. And I think members will probably be aware that this area, which is on the edge of the Vale of Pickering and the former Lake Pickering, is nationally and of European significance for its archaeology. Archaeologists are clearly at County Hall giving us a very strong view that we need more information at this point in time from that perspective alone anyway, but we've not received any from the applicant. That's it, Chairman. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Gary. I will move it for questions, and I think Councillor Potter had his hand up. Councillor Bailey, did you indicate, but your hand's disappeared from the screen? Okay, thank you. Councillor Potter.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've obviously gone through the consultants, or it's actually the applicants in this case, their report, and they certainly don't mind wasting a lot of paper. there are clear conflicts between the views of our officers and their views, and particularly over the claim that this is a brownfield site and that it's a residential C3 site, and also that it's not in the open countryside. And I wondered whether you'd got any comments on that one.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, there's been an exchange, well, a protracted exchange of correspondence on this issue. I think we've got to a point where the applicants have actually conceded their claims that this is previously developed land. I would welcome members to view the photographs that I've just shown you to decide whether this land is previously developed or not. If that's previously developed land, Chairman, then I think a significant portion of Ryedale is previously developed land, so we all need to rest rather uneasily tonight, I think. But having said that, I mean, clearly, you know, we do have relatively limited supplies of previously developed land in terms of the NPPF definition of what that constitutes. We are strongly of the view that it is not previously developed land, and I think were anybody to were this application to be refused, try and run that argument on appeal, we would be probably seeking some of our efforts back in the sense of cost on the grounds of simply being unreasonable, because it clearly is not previously developed land. And right. It is beyond any development limit, Chairman. It is in open countryside, so you're dealing with the policies that apply in those instances.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. I've just got another one. Yeah, I have to say I wasn't quite convinced by the little shed that it was a brownfield site. How many applicants have we got on that self-build register, and roughly how long have they been there?
I can't answer that question for you, Chairman, but Jill's on the phone. On the line. She may be able to easily answer that question. I mean, clearly we have a self-build register, and Jill may be able to answer that question for you. It's quite a healthy list, as I understand it.
Yeah, we have 69 people on our self-build register. But in terms of the legislation and how we're supposed to use that information, we're not required to find plots for those individuals on that register. The way the register works effectively is that it's an indicator of demand for self-build. And the requirements of the legislation are that we as a local authority, a local planning authority, are expected to release enough plots, self-build plots, to meet the demand that arises in various base periods. So the first base period was up to October 2016, when we had 4 individuals on the register, and our monitoring work revealed that we had given 52 planning permissions that technically could be classed as self-build, and so on. At the last base period, we have something like 46 unallocated planning permissions. In other words, planning permissions which we know are meeting a self-build demand, and we know that because the information we use to monitor it is the self-build exemption application forms that applicants make when they apply for permission, mainly for individual plots, the self-build SIL exemption forms.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that response, Jill. Thank you, Chair.
I think Councillor Thackeray has his hand up.
Yes, I do. Thank you. My screen froze temporarily. Yeah, the issue of previously developed land, I think, is one that may rear its head if the archaeologists start digging down. They may find that it was previously developed about 5,000 years ago. I don't know whether that counts as previously developed land or not. Personally, one or two things within the report that I find difficult to take on board, quite frankly. Self-build plots, self-build houses tend to be where somebody who can afford it and is allowed to do so, can go along and think, I'd like to build my little house here or whatever it might be, and commission a local builder to build them, which tends to make the world go round and keeps people in employment and so on and so forth. Personally, looking at the mentioned about potential for overlooking, I think of the village of Hovingham, whereby the main street of Hovingham was built extensively in parallel behind the main street, ostensibly blocking the historic views, if you like, from the main street over the open fields, and a certain family there gained planning permission for one massive line of houses, which frankly I think would be considerably closer in proximity to each other and have a greater overlooking issue of each other. I think if the other point mentioned in the report is that self-build properties tend to be of a particular design. I think it's a fallacy. Yes, Councillor Goodwin.
Sorry to interrupt. Are we in debate, or are we asking a question? Because we're actually asking
I will ask the question. Can we have a site visit? Can we have a site visit, please, to determine the overlooking issue that is flagged up in the report? Because I think this is a great site, and I think we should be approving it and cracking on.
Chairman, that really is a question for members to consider in the debate. I think. I mean, clearly, the officer view on that is that there's a clear policy issue, and that's why we've recommended what we've recommended. But I think probably it's best to move into debate, because I can't answer that question. It's a question for members.
Thanks, Gary. Simon, can we just park that while we do the questions, please,
yes.
and leave that for the debate?
No problem.
Thank you. Does any other member have questions for the officers, please? Can I just come in, Gary, because we've talked about the fact that this is clearly agricultural land. In fact, the two buildings that are on it are small scale equine development, and looking at those fields, I would say the first thing is they don't look like they've been grazed for some times, and the buildings don't look to be in use for me. And so this is surely very clearly agricultural land and not brownfield. We've got a situation where it's outside the development limits. We've got a situation where North Yorkshire Highways are not happy, and Highways England have said they've got concerns. Surely this is a situation where perhaps it's just too premature to come forward properly, and it doesn't fit with any of our policies.
Just on a point of clarity, Chairman, Highways England did initially raise concerns about the application when we first received it relating to the junction with the trunk road. They subsequently withdrew that objection. The comments that are outstanding in terms of the highway and the standard of the roads and access and turning facilities within the site are as of the county council, in terms of dealing with the local road issues, as it were. So there are some detailed issues there around the highway issue, the archaeology issue, but the principal issue, and there are issues about amenity as well, sorry, I overlooked that one, but the principal issues about the development of this agricultural land outside development limits in this location is there, and this development does not meet any of the exceptions in our plan that would warrant us to, set aside, it isn't plan compliant, and there aren't enough material considerations to set aside our policy relating to development in the open countryside. So the policy objection is a very strong one, Chairman.
Okay, thank you for that, because I've got another query. Was if this was a self-build site and it did come forward, we've got a whole situation about the way the road structure is done within that site. If they're self-build plots, who pays for it?
Ultimately, Chairman, if there's a deficiency in an infrastructure, the Highway Authority in this instance, for example, would expect the developer to pay for that upgrade. More conventionally, you're usually dealing with bigger house builders, and you're dealing with one entity. So at the moment, what we have is a situation where this site is owned by an individual who then may sell it to self-builds. They may come to their own arrangements, but clearly the issue with self-builds is that they may not all happen at the same time. And clearly the upgrade to the widening of the roadway or the provision of the footpath or whatever it ends up being would have to be done up front. So that does create some problems.
Okay.
So the problems for the developer.
Thank you for that, Gary. Does any other member have any questions for the officer? Okay, I'll move it into debate. I don't think we have a local member with us because I think it's Heselton. Would that be Councillor Garbutt-Moore?
Probably, I think.
Probably. So I'll open it up for members to move it into debate. And, Councillor Cleary.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. For the sake of kicking it off, I've read the report clearly. The recommendation on page 15 of the report is an overwhelming one. It doesn't fit. I mean, there are times when there are balanced applications that we try and find a way to accept it, but in this case, there's an overwhelming recommendation for refusal, and therefore I move refusal, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Cleary. Councillor Potter.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I would very much like to support self-build in the area, simply by the fact that they tend to build better quality houses using local contractors, local materials. They tend to be of better quality in terms of insulation and so on. But having said that, looking through the report, this quite clearly drives a coach and horses through our planning policies. And whether we agree with all or some of those policies is fairly immaterial, because that is what we have got to be judged or judging by alongside the NPPF. So on that basis, if it's so contrary to the policies that we have agreed and that have been agreed legally and by the inspector, then I can't see that we've got too much option. And I'm afraid I wasn't impressed by the presentations from the applicant with saying it was open land or previously developed land and all the rest of it. It just seemed quite nonsensical. So I'm quite happy to second the proposal for refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Potter. Councillor Bailey.
I was going to second it, Chair, but Councillor Potter has done.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Ryby.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just would like to comply with everybody else, really, and I want to commend the officer for his appraisal of this application. I think it's so straightforward and I recommend the committee to support our officer's report, and therefore I'm with it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ryby. Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, Chair. Having read the report, there is so much against this application. As it's previously been said, it drives a coach and horses through our policies. The report by the applicant doesn't fill me with inspiration or joy. So I will not be supporting this application, and I will support refusal. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now, can I just ask you, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Ryby, you look like you have legacy hands left up, so thank you for that, if you could take them down. Councillor Thackeray?
Yes, just like to ask if the officer can remind us all, please, what we approved not too long ago at the Snooty Fox, which, if I recall, was something like a doubling of the number of chalets, houses to be, or whatever they were.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Thackeray.
No, I haven't finished, Councillor Goodrick. I would just like to say that whilst everybody may applaud the officer's report in respect of its adherence to the planning policy, I would say that there are issues with the planning policy that need correcting rather than the application itself.
Councillor Thackeray, the planning committee is not the place to question planning policy.
I'm not questioning it. I'm just telling you what I think.
I know, Councillor Thackeray, but the place to question the planning policy is the P&R committee, I'm afraid. We have a policy, it was adopted by the council, and that's the policy we are required to work to.
I fully understand that, Councillor.
Whether we like all of it or some of it or not all of it, and not you know, that's
no. And I've spent most of my life actually saying what I think, and this is one of the occasions where
I appreciate that, Councillor Thackeray, but there's a time and a place, and the planning committee isn't the time or the place for this conversation. Gary, are you comfortable coming back and answering that question, or do you want us to move to the vote?
My memory isn't perfect, Chairman, but my memory of the most recent application at the Snooty Fox was to change from touring caravans to permanent caravans. I think the number was reduced, actually, during the processing of the application. I recall Alan Goforth presenting revised layout, and one of the issues that was discussed at that meeting was using that application to enhance the landscaping of the boundaries of the existing caravan site, which were rather sketchy. But obviously that's a tourism development, which our plan does, in appropriate circumstances, welcome in the countryside, as opposed to a different view in terms of other types of development, including, for example, permanent residential development, where development limits come into play.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Thackeray, because no one seconded your proposal for a site visit and there was a move to have the application refused by 2 other members, that's the vote that we'll be taking. So it has been moved and seconded for refusal, and if no one else has anything to say, I will go to the vote. Okay, I will go to the vote. Councillor Bailey, you are voting either for, against or abstaining refusal of the application.
Sorry, Chair, I just wasn't expecting to be first. I'm for the recommendation of refusal.
Thank you. Councillor Cleary?
For refusal.
Thank you. Councillor Goodrick, I am for refusal. Councillor Hope?
I don't think Councillor Hope is at the meeting, Chairman.
All right, so no apologies then. Okay, thank you. Councillor Mackenzie?
For refusal.
Thank you. Councillor Potter?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Thackeray?
Against.
Thank you. And Councillor Windrus?
Madam Chairman, I'm going to abstain because I joined midway through the report.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Windrus. So it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
You didn't ask me.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Ryby.
I'm against. I'm for the refusal.
Thank you very much. So
can I just point out, Chair, that Eric Hope is in the meeting according to the list at the side, but he's muted at the moment.
Right. I did think he was. Eric, can you hear me?
Madam Chairman, I believe EH is Ellie Hardy.
Oh, right.
Chair, Councillor Hope has just rejoined the meeting, so I don't know if he was having technical issues.
Oh, okay. Well, on the basis that he might have not been here for all of the discussion, perhaps I should take his vote.
I got caught up in the changeover.
Did you hear any of the debate and
no,
questions?
No, I didn't. I'll sit this one out.
Yes, thank you. Do you mind, Eric? I'm really sorry. Thank you very much. So the vote is Councillor Hope has to sit this out because he missed the beginning of the debate. Sorry, Eric.
Okay.
So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for refusal and 1 against refusal and 1 abstention. Gary, do you agree with those figures? You're on mute.
Sorry, Chairman. That's what I have. 6 votes for refusal, 1 against refusal, 1 abstention, and then Councillor Mason and Councillor Hope were missing.
Yeah.
You know, so that's the 10. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, members. If we can move on to item 7, please, which is on page 155 of your agenda. Just bring mine up. Which is application number 20/01135/TPO. This is for the removal of T10 and T11 Scots Pine. This is land off Westland, Kirby Moorside. And we do have a speaker on this, so I'm going to ask the speaker to come in and make his representations now. And that speaker is, bear with me, sorry, Mr.
Chairman, do you want the officer presentation?
Do we
first,
do that first?
Yeah, we normally have the
do that
presentation
first. Sorry. So who's doing it? Is it
that's me.
That got delegated up again?
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll keep this brief, Chairman, because it's just a couple of extra photographs in the presentation pack. These were taken just to give your members will have seen some photographs in the officer report on page 157 and 158, but I just thought a couple more sort of slightly wider field context views. Unfortunately, sadly, last week, the day of the visit, we were in a snowstorm. So these are pictures taken in the snow. But this is a view taken from the opposite side of the road, Westland Lane, looking over towards the open space on the what I was going to say a relatively recent development, Chairman, but it's probably getting on for 20 years old now. And what you see in the foreground there is one of the off-road pull-off parking areas for visitor spaces that was part of the scheme that was approved, the open space behind it. And then in the foreground, you've got the line of trees that were protected at the time that the application was dealt with in 2001. The development actually was granted on appeal, Chairman. It was on a former town garage site. And as part of that process at the time, the council also served and eventually issued a tree preservation order on the group of trees that ran along the southern boundary. And if members look on page 160, you can see that how the line of the trees ran along that boundary. What I would like to clarify, because some members may have seen in one of the letters from the agent, was a reference to a tree, either T1 or T2, that had been removed recently without an application having been made. And the reason for that, Chairman, was that actually when it came to it back in 2001, the TPO was only served on 6 out of the 11 trees. So all of the fruit trees at the back of the site were not included in the order, although they were part of the surveyed trees. So the trees that were actually protected under the 2001 order are trees T5, T6, T8, T9, T10 and T11. And as members will have seen, trees T8 and 9 were authorised for removal back in 2004 as a result of their health and damage that they incurred. So there already have been some trees removed, but trees 10 and 11 are the last two nearest to the road that you're looking at in the front of the picture in front of you. So Ellie, if you can go to the next photo. This is a view taken from the south, looking up Westland Lane towards the block of flats, as it is, the block of apartments on the corner, and in the foreground beyond the last bungalow, which is the applicant's property, you can see the 2 trees in question. So they're quite prominent in the street scene, which I think is drawn out in the officer report, Chairman. So that's really all I wanted to add at this stage. I think I think there is a speaker registered, Chairman, and I think that's the name here. So Mr. Hesford, Chairman.
Mr. Hesford, yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Hesford, I'm going to give you 3 minutes to speak, if that's okay, if you're still with us, and present your case. There will be a timer, and I will give you 3 minutes, and I will try and give you a warning when you've got 30 seconds left. Mr. Hesford, are you happy with those arrangements?
He's probably muted.
Mr. Hesford, are you muted? Ellie, I'm really sorry to ask, is Mr. Hesford still in the meeting or has he left? Sorry.
No, he is on the meeting. At the
Right.
moment, it does seem to show that he's on mute.
Mr. Hesford, are you having technical difficulties? I don't know how you're going to answer me because you're on mute and I can't hear you. It's slightly tricky, unless you use the message bar.
My screen is showing him not on mute, but he's clearly not able to make any sound. Chairman, Mr. Hesford did send us his speech if he had difficulty.
On the basis that we can't seem to get him into the meeting. Well, he appears to be in the meeting, but no one can hear him. And he's having difficulty. Perhaps you should just you should read it out, please. Sorry, Gary. I don't think we can. We've got an option. If you've got the copy of it, if you wouldn't mind.
I'm happy to do that, Chairman. We do encourage public speakers to send us their script just in case there are connectivity issues. I'm not sure if we can get a message to Mr. Hesford that I'm going to read it out. I think we do have his telephone number, Ellie.
We do, yes. I'll try and make contact.
Perhaps we can contact him to let him know that we're about to do that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Do you want to give Ellie a minute while she contacts?
Yeah, if we could, Chairman.
Sorry, numbers. I just, it is right that the public have the option to speak, and technical difficulties, we have had them a lot today, so forgive me.
Is that not going into it? Hang on, we'll go.
Oh, he's back. I think he's back.
Stop me now. Can you hear me, Gary?
I think, Mr. Hesford, we can hear you.
You can?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, Johnny, I don't know. I muted it when you pointed out that I wasn't muted, and then I couldn't get it back on again. Okay.
You've got 3 minutes, Mr. Hesford. I'll give you a warning when you've got 30 seconds left.
Yeah, I understand that, Madam Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We've lived in this bungalow now for 30 years, and when we bought it, there was an operational garage at the back. And just for Miss Elton's information, this is West Lund. Westland Lane is on the opposite side of the A170. It's not to be confused with the two. The owners maintained the trees on the land. Of course, in those days, they were much smaller. In the 20 years since the estate was built and the TPO came into force, there's been virtually no maintenance on any trees. As a result, we have now got these two towering monsters right on our boundary. And the branches, which were previously kept trimmed, are now right over our property. And the foliage is the only on the last third of the branch. So consequently, all the foliage just drops all its rubbish onto our property, on our garage and house. It's an absolute daily grind, cleaning up pine cones, needles, broken branches, and sap. It blocks the drains, blocks the gutters. It's broken the gutters on our property. I had a Morris Minor which was damaged by a falling branch, which it had to have extensive repairs to the roof, windscreen, and bonnet. The owners of the landowners, I believe they are, they said it was an act of God. Well, that act of God cost me my no claims bonus and £200 in excess for repairs. It's not that I don't like trees. We have a copper beech tree at the front of the house, which makes these two things look like saplings. And yes, it drops lots of leaves in wintertime. Yes, it drops its nuts, but we clean up and it's gone till next autumn. These pine trees are all year round. They never stop. The roots have gone under my driveway. We've had to dig the driveway up on 2 occasions for repairs. They're already lifting the block sets in the street on the adjacent to the T11, which they're going to have to be dug up again. It's only a matter of time before these roots are under our house and drains. And at which point, if we have to go to our insurance company for a claim, they will not renew our policy whilst ever the trees remain so close to our boundary. Over the years, we've seen trees cut down. I didn't realise that some of them weren't covered by the TPO. The Estate Management Committee, the Land Management Committee, they're all in support of this. I've made an agreement with Tony Clark, our ex-mayor, who is the chair of the Residents and Housing Committee, to replace these Scots pines with 2 silver birch trees to match the 2 that were planted a couple of years ago on the boundary. This will give a uniform appearance to the green area boundary. And I think finally, due to our advancing years and failing health, we find it much more difficult to keep up with the work that's necessary to keep our property clean. We feel that we should be able to enjoy our home and life without the constant worry caused by these trees.
Sorry, Mr. It's 20 seconds.
Right, finished.
Okay.
Thank you, madam.
Chairman, there was just one issue that I think Mr. Hesford was going to clarify, actually, was in relation to the fact that because he doesn't own the land on which the trees sit, that he has the agreement of the management company to replant.
I did actually cover that, Gary. I did say I have an agreement with Tony.
All right. Sorry, I missed
Tony
your...
Clark, and Tony is the chair of the management committee.
Right. Okay. Just clarifying that point, Chairman, in terms of this is a slightly unusual situation.
Okay.
The applicant isn't the owner of the site on which the trees stand.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hesford.
Thank you, madam.
I will open it up to questions from members, please. Councillor Potter.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've got a few questions. First of all, there are a couple of the objections were from the people at Plumtree Cottage and Hollygarth, and those aren't actually marked on the map. Have you got some indication of where they are, please?
Sorry, are you asking me, Councillor?
No, Mr. Hesford, no, it's the officers. Thank you.
Sorry, Chairman. I don't think they're on the map, Chairman. I can't picture quite where they are.
No.
I think they're probably nearer than the person who's actually objecting to the application, who lives on Ings Lane. But I haven't got an indication of where they are.
Okay.
Right. Okay. No worries. Given the definition of pollution, because they mentioned constant pollution, so I looked up the definition, and it says the introduction into the environment of a substance which has harmful or poisonous effects. So is there any indication what this constant pollution is, if it's not just pine cones and needles?
Well, probably a hard one for me to answer, Chairman, as the officer, but I think from the report, the issue that's been raised by the applicant has been around debris. Sorry, I was getting a bit of feedback,
Sorry,
Chairman.
feedback. Mr. Hesford, can you mute yourself again? Sorry.
Yes, sorry.
Thank you.
I think, Chairman, we've got 1 or 2 members who are not on mute as well. Probably a collection. But the issue around sap and debris cones, you know, it's that sort of thing. It's basically things falling off the tree.
Yeah. Right.
Gary,
just the last question here.
Some real issues, I think.
Yeah, the letter Right, I'll go ahead. The letter from Billsdale Tree Services on page 161 says the trees are of the wrong species for the position and planted too close to the property. Well, the question is, do the trees predate the property? In which case, was the house built too close to the trees?
It's a very good question, Chairman, in the sense that we estimate the trees to be around about 40 to 50 years old, but clearly the bungalow could be, possibly older than that now. It has that sort of 60s sort of feel to it. I don't know the precise chronology. The trees were planted, or the trees that were planted along that boundary were largely either pines or fruit trees.
Right, thank you, Chair.
Does any other member have any questions for the officer?
Yes, please, Chair.
Yes, Eric. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's horrible when you're locked in and you can't get out. Have I missed it, or do we have a distance from the tree trunk to the property?
The tree trunk, Chairman, I would hope the plans show you. I mean, there are only approximations of where the spreads are just perfect circles, of course, but the bigger dots in the middle are roughly where they are. And trees T11 and 12, as you can see from the plan and also the photographs. I think if members look at the photographs on page 158, then the trunk is close to that boundary.
Yeah.
There's no getting away from that. The top photograph and the one underneath it shows the location of the two trees, fairly close to that southern boundary.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Thanks, Gary. Thank you.
Any member have any other questions? Gary, I've got a couple of questions, and I don't wish to offend Mr. Hesford, really. That's not my intention at all. But it seems to me that actually there is a responsibility by the management company to have dealt with these trees, and I'm not entirely sure that the planning system and the tree is the place to deal with this issue. I would have thought that this is a civil issue between the householder and the management company. I'm sorry to say that.
I think it's one of the issues when you get developments built with open spaces on them, and then we very often will say in the planning committee, well, actually the open space will be taken on board by a management company, that deals with the upkeep of, or should be dealing with the upkeep of the open space, the grass cutting, the fences, any planting, whatever it might be. And in many respects, that's usually then passed on to residents on an estate in the form of an annual management charge. Now, this development was originally built by Barratt Homes, I think it was, back in the early 2000s, who then built it fairly quickly, both the apartments and the dwellings. And before long, the open space, which had then been laid and maintained for at least the 12-month period, would then have been handed on to this particular management company, which I believe exists in the northeast somewhere. I think the issue here, as far as we can see, is whilst some of the peripheral maintenance and grass cutting and things like that appears to have been done on a fairly regular basis, the slightly more pithier stuff in relation to looking at how a tree is maintained properly, as we've heard from the local residents, has probably not occurred in the same way. So here we've now got a tree or trees that are close to the boundary and probably are in need of more maintenance than they've had over the preceding 20 years. But I think the officer view, the tree and landscape officer's view is, well, actually these trees do have a value, do have a strong amenity value in his view in the street scene, and actually a less draconian solution rather than felling and replanting with something which might be a different species and a lot smaller and a long time to get back to that sort of impact in terms of amenity, is to be looking at possibly crown lifting, possibly branch reductions, general maintenance of a tree, which it would appear has not been carried out on these trees as it should have been over that period of time. So I think there's been, this is my take on it, is that there's been some neglect here, which is adding to this problem.
Okay. Just to clarify as well, because I know in the tree officer's report that he was satisfied there was little evidence of any damage being caused by the roots. Now, I'm slightly worried that Mr. Hesford says that he's relayed his driveway and things. And certainly it concerns me when branches fall out of trees, because if you're underneath it, it can kill you. But again, I'm going to come back to the tree. If you plant trees, you have to manage them, and it should be managed by the management company. Or am I reading this entirely incorrectly?
I think we're straying into the realms of property law in terms of impact of trees and tree roots on adjacent property. Certainly in terms of the impact of the trees on what was done as part of the development. One of the photographs on page 157 shows some of the brick-setted visitor car parking area missing. I personally went out on site last week and looked at that, and I didn't actually think that was tree damage. But you can see it's very localized. And when I looked at it and prodded, I couldn't see much in the way of tree roots that would loosen those 2 or 3 bricks. So I'm not convinced that that is actually tree damage. But the comment that we had from the speaker was about trees close to the boundary, which undoubtedly will then have roots going beyond the boundary, impacting on his property. And I think that's where you get into this issue of property law about trees on a boundary and who's responsible for what. So, you know, that's the difficult one in terms of where the responsibility lies with the management company. But we're straying outside of planning into property law there, I think, at that point.
Okay, thank you for the clarity. Does any other member have questions? No, I don't see any hands raised. So we'll move into debate. I'll send it first of all to Councillor Ryby, because he's the local member for Kirby Moorside. Councillor Ryby.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just want to draw attention. I think we're overcomplicating things with regard to the applicant's application. Okay, the trees have got tree TPOs on them, but he isn't wanting to remove them and not replace them. The trees, as far as I'm concerned, are not the best type of trees for the ecological or environmental benefits. There are 5 supporters for his application, together with the town council. The objector, who is appalled at the proposal for removing trees, forgets that he's offering from his own pocket to replace the trees. There's a suggestion by the officers that there's no proof that damage has occurred. Well, actually, there is proof, because there is photographic proof. Okay, you can dismiss the evidence as saying, well, it was because there was snow on the trees and therefore that puts them under pressure. But that doesn't solve the problem for the applicant. The snow is on trees that are heavy limbs that, yeah, should have been pruned, but they haven't been pruned. The trees get bigger, so they're more vulnerable to wind. And they're, you know, more vulnerable to falling over. And it's all very well saying about the management company are responsible and we should take legal action. The whole setup is saying, yeah, if you take the trees down, you can plant new trees, you can move it further away. There can be better trees than the ones that we're wanting to remove. So we will finish up with trees that are more suitable for the area, will be more ecologically advantageous, more environmentally advantageous, and will be further away from the applicant's property. And everybody's happy about that. So I really don't understand. It's kind of like human beings, you grow older and older, and you need to let room for, you could say, well, this guy, we've heard it all week about a certain member of the royal family, but he passed his mature point, really, and he'll make now more room for the younger people coming up. Bit like trees, more vigorous trees coming up, and they will create more benefits. So I really want the committee to support the applicant and vote for the replacement of the trees with more suitable trees. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ryedale. Councillor Bailey.
Thanks, Chair. When I was looking at this report, I thought, well, this is a bit of a no-brainer, but then having heard the applicant and thought about it again, I'm not quite so sure. I don't want to disagree with our tree officer's assessment of the trees. I'm not a professional tree surgeon or a boroculturalist, but we do have a professional view from Billsdale Tree Services that opposes that, saying that the trees are the wrong species and planted in the wrong position. And moving on to thinking of the future, I mean, these are trees that we all know in more timber production locations, and that they do grow to be massive in time. And so we could certainly improve them by crown lifting them and dealing with that. But sooner or later, that conflict of interests between the residential needs of the property and the trees will not go away. When I look at the trees in the pictures, they do have an impact upon the conservation area, but I'm not sure that I actually think it's a positive impact. And I think, when they were planted alongside fruit trees, maybe 30 or 40 years ago, to look at them, they would have matched in very nicely. Now those fruit trees have come and gone, and these trees are still only half gone. So I'm in a bit of a quandary, really. It is true that they do have a TPO on, and it is true that they are not showing the normal signs which would require something to be done about them. On the other hand, I can't see a good solution to this long term other than replacing them with something which is appropriate for that location. So I think I'm with Councillor Ryedale, to be honest, but I am mindful of going against the recommendation that seems quite strong. I don't usually go on as long as that, but I'm in a bit of a quandary. I think I'd like to support this one.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. Councillor Potter.
Yes, thank you, Chair. With regard to what Councillor Ryedale said, I think there would be an absolutely vast outrage across the country if Prince Philip had been euthanized when he was in his 40s or 50s because he was past his prime. But leaving that one aside, I said at the last meeting, trees in an urban environment clearly need to be safely maintained. But in this case, it's the responsibility of the management company, as the chairman actually alluded to, and that appears to have been neglected. So I see this as being far more of a civil issue than a planning issue. I do certainly have some sympathy for the applicant, but his argument should be with the estate management company. So it's no surprise that they're supportive of the trees removal, because that's most convenient for them. Now, having said that, if the reasons given for this application were used to create a precedent, then almost every healthy, attractive tree in an urban setting would have to be felled, along with quite a lot in rural settings as well, as being dangerous, inconvenient, dropping, damaging things, or even causing pollution, heaven forbid. And that scenario would be completely untenable, massively expensive, and hugely damaging to the environment for reasons that everyone present should clearly know. It would also make a complete mockery of tree protection orders. So I'm afraid that despite having sympathy with the applicant, I will move the officer's recommendation of refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Councillor Cleary.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, I don't pretend to be a professional forester, but I did study a bit of forestry. And I confess to have a liking for Scots pines. They're one of our 3 native conifers. But they're a forest. They're a pioneer. They are a pioneer species. But they're more of a forest tree. I think, quite rightly, it's been mentioned that I'm just looking at the pictures because I like trees. It has been mentioned that it ought to be a management problem rather than a cutting down. I think we've probably gone too far. It is what I believe foresters call happy chappies. But if we were to allow these to be cut down, we would actually gain trees, and that would be subject to a planting agreement, which we could delegate. I think in this instance, although I entirely understand the reasons for the recommendation, I think in this instance we have to balance the benefits of the human inhabitants, the applicants, in fact, to the 2 trees that we're looking at. And I am just on balance persuaded by the applicant that we should allow this on the proviso that we get a good planting plan as a replacement. So in this instance, I will go against the recommendation and support the cutting down of the 2 trees. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Windruss.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, I think I'm with the local member on this. If there is a replanting of 2 trees that are probably more suitable for the location, like the copper beech suggested by the applicant, then I think I can support the application. I do hear what Councillor Potter's saying. Yes, you could say that, but in this location and looking at the trees and the proximity to the garage and the fence of the applicant, I think I'll go and support the local member. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you for that. Councillor Thackeray.
Yes, I'd like to support the local member also. I think replacing the trees are what I think in Yorkshire we would describe as having got out of hand. They've got away on themselves, they would say. They're a bit big now for where they are. I don't know who's rattling and crisp packets, but I can't hear myself speak. I think we're looking at these issues on a case-by-case basis. I don't think we're setting a precedent for anything in particular. TPOs are subject, as this is, to a planning application. Therefore, I think we are, as the planning authority, correct to pass judgment on that. Whether or not the trees belong to us, the applicant, or anybody else, I think, like any normal planning application, anybody can make one. In this case, I think it's sensible. I think the trees are too big, too close to the property. Whether one was there first or otherwise doesn't make any difference. They're standing where they are. And the quickest and easiest way is to gently remove them and lay them to rest, turn them into a park bench, if you like, and then plant some nice new trees, perhaps with some blossom on them.
Thank you, Councillor Thackeray. Mr. Housen, you've got your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just to pick up on a point, I think it was Councillor Windruss just raised about copper beech. I think that was the reference from the applicant to the tree opposite. What they're proposing in the application details was, I think, planting 2 replacement trees, which were going to be, I believe, a silver birch rather than a copper beech. So just to clarify that, they're not proposed, because copper beech clearly is another so ultimately resulting in another huge tree, whereas various species of birch are not as voluminous and heavy.
Okay, thank you for that. Anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Bailey, your hand is up. Did you want to come back in? Okay, thank you. I am inclined to support the officers. I must be honest. I appreciate the difficulties that the householder has. And for me, there is no doubt that if you have trees, they must be managed. And that management should have fallen to the management company and not to the householder. and not to this authority to make a decision to clear up a problem that has been caused by a management company. That's my personal view. I dislike the removal of trees, and healthy trees, and these are healthy trees. They would certainly be better for some judicious pruning and maybe some topping out, but actually it fills me with no pleasure to remove a tree at all. So I am going to support and second Councillor Potter's proposal for officer recommendation. If Councillor Potter would just confirm to me that that's what he meant to do, so to support the officer recommendation.
Yeah, that's correct, Chair.
Thank you. But in fairness, members, nobody actually proposed to go against the officer recommendation. You made a preference, but nobody proposed it and nobody seconded it.
Sorry, that was my wording maybe wasn't clear, but I did suggest that we should support the applicant, meaning I proposed that we support the applicant. It meant that we were proposing, I was voting against the officer's recommendation.
Right, Councillors Bailey and Thackeray.
It makes no difference, Chair. We can take a vote one way or the other.
Okay. If you're happy to take the vote, members, we'll move to the vote. I'll go down the list. Councillor Bailey. You're either for or against the officer recommendation.
I'm against refusal, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cleary.
Against refusal.
Thank you. Councillor Goodrick, for refusal. Councillor Hope.
Against refusal. So did you get that?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about that one. So you're voting against refusal, right? Okay. Councillor Mackenzie.
For refusal.
Thank you. Councillor Potter.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Thackeray.
Against.
Councillor Windress.
Against.
And Councillor Ryby. Councillor Ryby, for or against refusal?
Sorry, I've been frozen out for a while, so I just need to check what I'm voting on.
You are either
I'm voting
for refusal or against refusal.
I'm voting against refusal.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, members. The committee has decided that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are against the refusal, and 3 members are for the refusal. So that vote is for the removal of the trees, just so that we're clear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, members. Moving on to item 8, which
Sorry, Chair.
Sorry, Councillor Bailey.
Just to butt in, the fact that refusal wasn't supported does leave the question of the replacement and conditions and other things that you might want to do, which I'd be happy to delegate to officers, but it shouldn't just be left like that.
Mr. Housden.
Yeah, I think what I'd picked up from the debate, certainly I think it was from Councillor Cleary, was that they were happy in the event of the approval decision of the committee effectively to approve the removal of the trees, that the delegation of the replacement species be delegated to officers. So if that's what members are happy to do, then we would take that on board, Chairman.
Is everybody happy?
Chair, I would support that.
Thank you. Councillor Thackeray, your hand's up.
Yeah, just to say that I agree, delegation to officers, but perhaps it could be stated that in consultation with the occupants of the properties in the vicinity, so that we don't end up with a repeat scenario 20 or 30 years down the line.
Chairman, I think we can see what's being proposed, Chairman, in terms of the type of species. The delegation will be on the species, the size, the planting, the detail of that, the location. You know, so I wouldn't envisage just reconsulting on that on the basis that the only affected resident of note is the applicant.
Okay, Councillor Cressy, hands up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Is there any way we can beef up the conditions on this to ensure that the management company actually do what they're supposed to be doing and actually manage those trees properly, including the replacement ones?
Well, I think, unfortunately, Chairman, you're straying beyond planning into management, and we would hope that we're going to be agreeing, it would seem, species that are not the challenge that these pine trees often are.
Okay. If members are happy with it being delegated to officers, I will go with that. My only comment with a replacement tree scheme, whether it's 1, 2, 3 or 4, is that in at least the first couple of years, those trees have to be watered in such a regular way, and who is going to take the responsibility to do that? And I think that's a key point, because if they fail and die, what redress have we got to put them back?
Chairman, the replanted trees will be part of the TPO, so they'll be covered by the TPO. So I envisage that we're dealing with a replacement of tree for tree, yeah, albeit of a different species. And if there is a failure, then clearly we will be taking action through the TPO process. But you know, one would hope that through a combination of the management company and the local presence, that won't happen. Okay. You know, I don't think it's in the residents' interest for that to happen.
Okay, thank you for that clarity. If members are happy, we'll move on to agenda item 8. Okay, thank you. It is application number 20/01220 outline. This is for the erection of 1 3-bedroom dwelling, land off Low Moorgate, Rillington, Malton. And I think this is Ellie. Hello, Ellie. Would you like to join the meeting?
I'm taking this one, Madam Chairman, if that's all right with you.
That's fine. Yeah.
Thank you.
The delegation upwards then.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, this is an application for an outline application for a 3-bedroom detached dwelling on an infill plot in Rillington. It is an infill plot which effectively meets our definition, the criteria of an infill plot, in very much a sort of a textbook example, really. And it's in a location in one of our service villages within development limits, where certainly our policy is to accommodate new residential development. So in principle, this proposal aligns very, very strongly with the development plan. The application is in outline form with all matters reserved, but it is accompanied by a proposed layout plan and details which we can condition just to ensure that the scale, the orientation of the building and its position on the plot are acceptable in terms of the street scene, the setting of the listed building, neighbouring amenity, for example. So we'll just, Ellie, if it's all right with you, just look at the presentation and the pictures, please. Thank you. So that's the location of Low Moorgate in Rillington. So the A64 is just sort of to the south off the bottom of the screen there. So rectangular shaped plot to the east of Low Moorgate. Move to the next picture, Ellie, please. And that's just standing on Low Moorgate, looking straight at the plot itself. Just in terms of the surrounding context, you note from the report that there have been some objectors to the proposal, neighbours really. That includes the neighbouring property that you can see there to the right, number 38 Low Moorgate, the bungalow whose garden bounds the property at the back, number 4 Manor View, I think that is. And then the property which you just can't see on this shot, but to the right, which is Holly Cottage, number 42, Lower Moorgate. Move on to the next picture, please, Ellie. It's just another shot looking towards Holly Cottage, which is the listed building on the sort of northwestern boundary of the site. Move on to the next slide, please, Ellie. And that's just looking from across the road back at the gap. So you can see from the little post and rail fencing there, that's the infill plot between the two properties, number 42 and number 38. Move on to the next. That's great, thank you, Ellie. And this is just taken from across the road, again looking across at the plot in the street scene. So the proposal is very much to have the building towards the front of the site and slightly towards the property that you can see there, the southern side of the plot, so more towards number 38 than to number 42 on the other side. Move on to the next picture, please, Ellie. It's just another shot that looks sort of further up, northwards, northwestwards up Lower Moorgate. So you just get a sense of the street scene there. If we could move on to the next one, please, Ellie. That's taken from within the plot, just looking back towards Manor View. Members will note from the report and the drawings, there is a section of the plot towards the back that is subject to a covenant, so there would be no building on that parcel of land towards the back, but very much the proposed sort of layout plan is that the dwelling is situated towards the front, the street frontage, Lower Moorgate. It'd be two-storey at that street frontage, a single-storey section at the back, followed by some garden land to the rear. Going to move on to the next picture, please, Ellie. And that's from towards the back of the site, looking back towards Lower Moorgate. So you have the rear of number 38 on the right there. Have the next picture, please, Ellie. Again, looking towards number 42, Holly Cottage, from the back of the site. Can we move on to the next picture, please, Ellie? Thank you. And again, looking across the site towards number 38, and that property that you can see just to the right of it is across the other side of the road, across the other side of Lower Moorgate. Could just move on to the next picture, please, Ellie. This is taken from the back rear sort of yard area of number 38. So the occupant of that property runs a small agricultural machinery repair business from the workshop that you can see to the right there, and if you look sort of beyond the blue tractor, that's the gap between the chimney pots is effectively the infill plot, the application plot that you can see. Can we move on to the next picture, please, Ellie? And this is taken from Manor View, looking across towards the plot. So if you see the taller house there in the distance with the two chimney pots at the gable ends, that's the house that you could see that's located on the other side of the street from Lower Moorgate. So that infill plot is between the gable end of that property to the right and number 38, which is the property with the other set of chimney pots towards the left. And I think that's the end of the images, Ellie. Thank you, Madam Chairman. The issues are outlined in the report. I would say, though, that the applicant's agent has confirmed that there isn't an intention to include any windows on the northern elevation of the proposed building. That's the elevation that looks towards number 42. They do have some windows in their side elevation. So I think the recommendation is very much one of approval subject to conditions, and with the inclusion of a further condition which would restrict window openings on that northern elevation. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. We do have a speaker on this item this evening. It's Mr. Stone, Mr. Ben Stone. Mr. Stone, if you're with us, if you can let me know. You have 3 minutes to present your case.
Hello, Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
I can, yes. I will give you an audible warning at 30 seconds if I can remember to look at the clock properly.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. Just some periphery points to add to the both the written report and the representation Jill's already put forward. This site's been subject to a pre-application process with the council, something that we find very valuable in putting these proposals forward, and so it's really been a joint process trying to bring this site forward on behalf of the Methodist Circuit. As many of you will know, the Methodist Circuit have some interesting projects in town, and this site ultimately will help fund some of the things that they're doing. So we've responded to feedback through the planning process, and we've submitted some revised plans, and are very happy for those to be adopted by condition, and fundamentally responded to the conservation officer's thoughts on street scene and the scale of the building, and also responding to neighbour concerns about the effects that this plot might have on them. So for Mr. and Mrs. Dorman specifically asked a question about examining the deeds on this site, because they thought that there was a legal restriction on the site as a whole for it to be developed as a Methodist chapel. And I can confirm categorically that is not the case. The site is unencumbered and is legally able to go forward. With regards to some of the comments mentioned by Mr. and Mrs. Dale about concerns about proximity, the report also alludes to the fact that this is a situation that will be dealt with by the Party Wall Act, not by the Planning Act. There's been quite a lot of care with regards to positioning the house, not to infringe on anyone's rights to light. So the footprint of the house has been positioned such that it minimises any impact on the neighbours. The parish council mentioned several points about parking and otherwise, and we've taken care to make sure that there is off-street parking associated with this development. Very happy for the security lights, floodlights, and etc. to be noted by condition. We think this will be a very positive addition to Low Moorgate, modern house, low energy, in a sustainable village. I think it's a good one. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll open it up for questions from members. Councillor Potter.
Yeah, just purely out of curiosity, I'm just intrigued why it's got this covenant on the back on what seems to be a bog standard piece of land.
I haven't got the answer to that question, Madam Chairman, but Mr. Stone may have the answer to it.
May I ask you, we wouldn't normally, Mr. Stone, but if you could come quickly back and answer that question for the member.
I can. The development of bungalows behind the site was developed by another local developer, and part of that land parcel was associated with that, and they put a restricted covenant on that land, thinking that they may well be able to claw that into a future development associated with that developer. Fortunately, the way that the site is developable, we don't need to rely on that at all. So it's the site itself is not affected by that covenant.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Stone. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other members have any questions? Jill, nobody's raised their hands, but can I just get some clarity from you? If you go, sorry, I just want to go back to the drawings. Just bear with me because I put my timer on. We go back to the drawing, which is on page 176. It shows the indicative placement of the new suggested property, and there are some lines which line up. Now, at number 38, there is a small window at the back of that property. I believe it's the only window on number 38 that is actually in that side. And there was a suggestion that there would be a loss of light. But can we confirm that that single window, which is ground floor, is opposite a single story element of the proposal?
Yes, it is, and I think the architects have drawn that line on to make that very clear that that window would effectively facing towards the single story section of the proposed dwelling. I think there's a gap in total of around 7.9 metres between the wall of that house and the wall of the single story section.
Thank you. It was very preemptive of you. That was my next question. Thank you. Does any other member have a question for the officer? I don't see any hands raised, so I'll move it into debate. Now, normally this would have been, I think, Councillor Raper's ward. So I'm happy if
I think it's Councillor Garbutt Moore again.
Is it really? Sure. Is it? Okay.
Rillington, yeah.
It's Rillington. Okay. But we don't have the local members, so does anybody else want to pick it up? Councillor Potter.
Yeah, didn't want to disappoint you as usual. Yeah, I mean, looking at this one, it is a classic infill plot. What on earth is going to happen to it otherwise? It complies with all our local plan. It would appear, and I'm always very pleased to see that the applicant makes every effort to comply with what the officers ask for. They've moved things around. They've complied with the what do you call it, officer? Oh, by memory, dear oh dear. Anyway, I think this is just a classic no-brainer, and I'm quite happy to move approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. So you've moved. Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, Chair. Having read the report, I have to concur with Councillor Potter. They seem to have thought it very well through, and I'm happy to second Councillor Potter's motion.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cleary.
I have nothing to add. I will support the application.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Any other member wish to speak? No, from the chair, I'm happy to support the application. So on the basis that it has been moved and seconded for approval, may I go down the list alphabetically? I believe Councillor Councillor Bailey has left the meeting because of a work commitment, so I don't think he's with us anymore. Councillor Cleary.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Goodrick is 4. Councillor Hope.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Potter.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Thackeray.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Windress.
4.
Thank you. And Councillor Ryby.
4.
Thank you very much. That is a unanimous vote. That is 8 votes for. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yep. 8 votes for. Thank you very much. Can we now move on to item 9, members, which is on page 183 of your agenda. Just bear with me 1 second. This is householder application for the erection of a single-storey part side, part rear extension. This is 5 The Orchards, Beedlam, Helmsley. It is down for Ellie Thompson, but I'm not sure if Ellie's with us or if it's got delegated up again.
I'm here, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellie.
Thank you. Members, this is a minor householder application for the erection of a part rear, part side extension. The application has been brought to the Planning Committee for determination following concerns raised by the Parish Council in relation to the scale and materials of the proposed development. Following these concerns, the applicant revised the scheme to include a lantern roof light and the reuse of the existing stonework on the sides of the proposed extension. The site is located at the southern end of the Orchards cul-de-sac in Beedlam. The new extension is proposed to have a flat roof form with an overall height of approximately 2.7 metres and will have an overall depth of approximately 4 metres. The overall width of the extension would be approximately 14.7 metres. Members will note from the report that the fallback position for this application is not significantly different from what is currently proposed. As the property is a detached dwelling, an extension of the same scale as the rear section of the proposed extension could be built under permitted development rights. Since the agenda was published, the Parish Council have responded to the revised scheme, stating they're happy with the proposed reuse of the stonework on the side elevations, and they also stated that while they still believe the extension is too big for the site, they take on board the comments in relation to what could be achieved under permitted development rights. There are no further updates, Madam Chairman. All of the issues are outlined in the report and the recommendation is as outlined. So if we could move forward to the first picture, please, Ellie. So this is an aerial photo of the site showing its location to the north of the A170 with the access into the orchards coming off High Lane. And you can also see the relationship between the application site and the neighbouring properties. Next picture, please, Ellie. So this is the front of the property. In terms of what would be visible of the proposed development from this vantage point, only really the side section of the proposed extension would be visible from the front. And even that would be partially obscured by the timber gate, which is sort of visible there between the garage and the dwelling. Next picture, please, Ellie. So this is an image of the rear of the property. The proposed extension would extend across the entire rear elevation that you can see there, and the side section of that extension would extend beyond, sort of roughly in line with the timber gate that you can see towards the front of the dwelling. Next picture, please, Ellie. So this is an image of the garden of the property, sort of demonstrating the boundary treatments and the level of planting along the eastern boundary. I think the extension would extend out roughly to sort of where the first yellow round tree is on that boundary. Next picture, please, Ellie. So this is the other side of the garden, showing the boundary with the neighbour to the west. The land levels at this site are quite a lot higher than the A170, which is immediately to the south of the application site, which is why there's quite an open view beyond the rear fence there. Next picture, please, Ellie. And this is looking straight out from the back of the property. So those properties in the image are on the other side of the A170, and they're over 25 metres away. and they're the top floors of those properties. The next picture, please, And this is just an image showing, taken from the southern side of the A170, looking towards the application site. So members will see the difference in the land levels. The property in question is the orange roof, closest to the left of that image there. And I think that's the last photo. So thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much, Ellie. Thank you for your report. Very good. I'll open it up to questions from members because I've got no speaker listed for this item. So I'll go straight to members for questions. And I don't see any questions coming from members. No, I'll open it up for debate then. I'm not sure. Snowy, this is your area, isn't it?
It is, Councillor. Sorry, Chair. Yeah, it is. I have absolutely no problem with this. I know the location very well. It's barely visible from anywhere. Even if you walk past, as I regularly do alongside the A170, if you didn't know they were there, you probably wouldn't ever notice them, these bungalows on that estate. So I have no problem. I'll move approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Windruss. Anybody else? Councillor Cleary.
Happy to second the local member's suggestion, Madam Chairman.
Anybody? Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, having read the report and listened to the words of our local member, I'm also very happy to support this. It seems entirely reasonable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Potter.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My only concern would be on an elevated position like that, on top of an embankment, would be the stability of the land, but clearly that would be an issue for building control. But other than that, I can't see any problems. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Councillor Potter. Does any member have any other comments to make? Right, thank you, members. It's been moved and seconded for approval. Can we go to the vote? Councillor Cleary.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Goodrick, I am for. Councillor Hope.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie.
For.
Councillor Potter.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Thackeray.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Windruss.
For.
Councillor Ryby.
For.
Thank you very much. Thank you, members. That's unanimous. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 votes for. Thank you, members. If we can move on to item 9 now, please, which is on page 197 of your reports. This is application number 21/00058 full. It's for the erection of the extension to a general purpose agricultural building for the housing of livestock, the storage of farm machinery, produce, bedding and feed. And Ellie, I think this is another one for you.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Members, this is a minor application for the erection of an extension to an existing agricultural building. The application has been brought to the Planning Committee following the receipt of an objection from the Parish Council, which raised concerns over the extension of the built-up area into the open countryside outside of the curtilage of the site. And they also stated that the design and character of the buildings are unwelcome. The site is located on Manor Farm, which is on the northern side of Brighton Rig Road. The new extension is proposed to be used for the storage of hay, feed, farming machinery and for the housing of livestock. The applicant is in the process of establishing an agricultural business involved in the rearing and breeding of cattle and currently has approximately 14 cattle. The proposed building will be of the same form, scale and materials as the existing building. The extension is proposed to have a depth of approximately 11 metres, bringing the new northern elevation of the building in line with the northern elevation of the neighbouring agricultural building. There are no further updates to the report, Madam Chairman. It is considered that the proposed extension would have a strong visual association with the existing group of buildings on the site, and the recommendation is as outlined. So if we could move to the first picture, please, Ellie. So this is an aerial view of the site. It is an established sort of traditional farmyard in a very rural area, and it doesn't have any immediate neighbouring properties. Next picture, please, Ellie. So this is an image taken from towards the front of the site with Ryedale Rig Road behind us. The building proposed to be extended is the dark grey double pitch building at the back of the photo. The timber building sort of to the left is another existing agricultural building used for the housing of livestock. Next picture, please, Ellie. So this photo is taken from the rear of the buildings. The proposed extension is proposed to match the existing building in form, scale and materials, so it will effectively look exactly like that, just a little bit sort of closer to where the photo is taken from. It'll be in line with the northern elevation of the timber agricultural building next to it. Next picture, please, Ellie. So this photo just shows the current difference in the projections of the buildings. So the proposed extension to the double pitch building would effectively fill that gap and bring the buildings in line with each other. Next picture, please, Ellie. So this is just a photo taken from the side, showing the extent of the extension and the gap that it would fill. And this is also the side where the proposed roller doors are proposed to be installed. Next picture, please, Ellie. So this is a distance view from the west, and this view wouldn't really change because the proposed extension wouldn't extend any further out than the timber building that you can just about see in that image. So this view would probably stay the same. Next picture, please, Ellie. So this is a distance view from the sort of northwest. Again, it will change slightly with the northern elevation being brought in line with the neighbouring building, but the overall mass would remain very similar. Next picture, please, Ellie. And this is a distance view from the east. So while the view of the site will change slightly in terms of materials, really, the extension will not extend outside the existing massing that is already visible from this vantage point. Next picture, please, Ellie. And this is another distance view from the east, sort of with Ryedale Rig Road just on the left-hand side there. I think that's the last photo, so thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much, Ellie. Thank you for your good report. We do have a speaker on this item, Mr. Speakman. Are you with us, Mr. Speakman?
Yes, I am.
Mr. Speakman, if you would like to prepare, you've got 3 minutes to present your information to the committee. I will try and give you an audible warning at 30 seconds left. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Ellie's covered everything that needed to be said. I was just concerned that the parish council had said that it was outside the existing curtilage, and the building materials were unwelcome, which I couldn't really see the point of that. I mean, the materials are the same as what's already there, and the new building is no further out than the existing building, so I couldn't see why that objection had been raised. But yeah, that's all I have to say, really.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speakman. Thank you.
Thank you.
Members, I'll only up for questions if members have questions for the officer. Councillor Cleary.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I wonder if I might refer the officers to the picture, the photograph that shows the back of the existing buildings. There's what looks like a cattle crush and two trailers parked up against the existing twin pitch building. Am I right in thinking that there's ridge and furrow in that field? And if there is ridge and furrow, is it scheduled?
Thank you, Councillor Cleary. I don't remember seeing any sort of significant ridge and furrow on the site. It's definitely not scheduled. There might be some modern low ridge and furrow, but it's not scheduled, no.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Gary, did you want to come in?
It was only just to say, Chairman, I don't think there's any scheduling there. I think if there is any slight contouring in the land, it's probably more likely to be steam ploughing.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Potter?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, with reference to the planning history on page 198 and the application 19-01129 full, I'm just wondering, were these agricultural buildings deemed to be redundant? And if we just received an application for 2 3-bedroom dwellings on this site, what would have been the chances of them being approved?
Well, Chairman, we're sort of speculating on that, but in essence, the buildings that are subject to the conversion were redundant in terms of modern farming practices.
Okay. I think we are straying away from not considering what we've got in front of us. Sorry, Mike. Anybody else got any questions for officers? Okay, I will open it up for debate. I'm not sure who the nearest member to this will be, because does it fall under Moulton, this bit, or Pickering? Mike?
I would imagine this is Councillor Mason's patch, but he's not here.
He's not here. Michael?
You referring to me, Madam Chairman?
Yes, Councillor.
I'm very happy to open it up. Yeah, I'm very happy to support this application. I'm surprised by the nature of the objection by the parish council. The application is set up against an existing range of buildings. It's viewed, if at all, from a distance against an existing steading. We support agriculture. So the pictures of the existing buildings are most attractive. I think some of the most attractive, quite attractive as farm buildings can be in terms of the use of the cladding, the timber cladding. I have nothing more to add. I support this application, Madam Chairman. I move approval.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, Chair. My good friend, Councillor Cleary, has just said pretty much everything that I was going to say. We should support agriculture. So important to us in this area. It seems absolutely the right sort of development. I too am a little bit surprised that the parish council have raised an objection, and I'm very happy to second Councillor Cleary's motion.
Thanks, Councillor Mackenzie. Councillor Potter.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I have to say that I find it rather interesting that permission was granted to change the use of and convert agricultural buildings to 2 houses, and then have to give permission to a new agricultural building and then an agricultural extension. And this rather strikes me as an interesting and progressive application of the planning system. And I can't help but wonder why this has been deemed acceptable when cases of this nature are often refused on the thinnest of evidence. So while I can't see any good reason to refuse it, I don't feel able to support this either. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Potter. Anybody else wish to make a comment? I'm going to comment from the chair, because when I looked at the photographs, it's quite clear there's a great deal of effort going into this farmstead. There's a great deal of work being done on what would be, I would term, as older redundant buildings, and maybe not quite as suitable as they should be for modern farming practices. I'm satisfied that the building extension falls within the confines of the farm yard position, and actually I wholeheartedly support the application for those reasons. So if no other member has any comments, we'll move to the vote. Councillor Cleary.
For.
Thank you. I'm going to vote for. Councillor Goodrick for. Councillor Hope.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Potter.
Abstain.
Abstain. Thank you. Councillor Thackeray.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Windrus.
For.
Thank you. And Councillor Ryby.
For.
Thank you very much, members. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 votes for and 1 abstention for approval. Thank you very much. We are almost at the end of the agenda, members. I don't have any other business. I would draw your attention to the applications determined under the delegated powers. If anybody has any questions for officers, please shout up now. Otherwise, I will declare the meeting closed, and thank you all very much for attending. Thank you to all the officers for the hard work and the reports, and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Good night.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening.
Good night. Good night, all.
Bye.
Night, all.